Hi, LinkedIn family. Jonathan here from Some Talented People. And this is episode 3, day 3 of mental health or mental illness, I beg your pardon, from an HR perspective. And yesterday we looked at how mental health or mental illness has impacted economies and families. And today we're going to look at it from the perspective of a year, slightly over a year into COVID. Because clearly things that have happened in the last year and are going to happen this year will carry on affecting people for a long time. So want to get some perspectives on that. Hi, welcome back to day 3 of our series on mental wellness, mental health and mental illness with relation to work and human resources. Obviously, the main elephant in the room is COVID-19. What do you think the impacts are going to be, and what can businesses do now? Kerr?
Yeah, I would say that the greatest impact is actually very simple. We have very often thought that when we have stress or when we burn out and we blame something external. And so far we have said that it's a workplace problem in a sense that there is not enough wellness or gadgets around us so that we can be well at workplace. But what happened with COVID-19 is actually a very simple thing. We started to work from home. And surprise, surprise, our stress levels didn't go down. Instead, they went up. What it proved for me is actually a very simple thing of what we have been talking about also in Wellness Orbit for years and years, is stress is not the external job. Stress is the problem of your own reactivity.
Right.
And when you work from home, you find that all your reactions, all your inner reactivity is with you. So the external stressors are not the real problem. The real problem is how do you react in a situation where you find yourself in. And it turns out that working from home can be a nightmare as you have a cat, as you have a dog, as you have a spouse, as you have kids, as you have many things going around. You have to make your own lunch. And suddenly you see that you have much more stressors than maybe you ever had in the workplace. And if you don't have tools or intrapersonal skills, how to take care of your inner reactivity, so you just experience problems.
What's your perspective, Jack?
Yeah, I agree. I was reading a New York Times article that specifically said that 86% of employees prefer to work from home, whereas 1 in 5 are interested in going back to the workplace full time because of COVID-19. So there are some extra layers of stress, even with the idea of trying to integrate back into the workplace. So employers are going to have to really keep a focus on that. I know that there are some COVID protocols, but they have not always been 100% because it's, with COVID, it's like a ghost.
It's impossible, surely.
Right.
Yeah, and definitely COVID also brings out one extra layer of stressors, and that is kind of a wearing mask, keeping your hands clean so you don't touch any surfaces, and you remember to wash your hands and so on. So in that sense, the amount of external stress is bigger. And that also clearly shows that when you're not equipped to deal with stress yourself, then you have a problem. And what was also surprising that the other day I saw statistics that about 70% of HRs have taken additional sick leaves or absences from work because of the additional stress. And I think the HR sector is probably trapped or experienced most of the stress, because you have to deal with people, you have to deal with letting go people, you have to deal with reorganizing work. Or how have you experienced it, Jacqueline?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we've had some issues with that because as soon as COVID struck, the organization is scrambling. This just came out of nowhere, and most organizations have a disaster recovery plan or disaster preparedness plan, but nobody had a COVID plan.
Yeah.
So it was added stress not only to HR professionals. I think it was more, as Herb mentioned, because we were accountable to making sure that we could make sure that people were safe in the workplace. And leadership is looking to HR to definitely come up with plans that can facilitate that. So, you know, in itself, it was stressful for me, just working in the organization, because your whole focus is not necessarily on yourself, but you're trying to manage the employees, you know. So working at a refinery at the time, these gentlemen and women work as operators 24 hours a day. There's a 24-hour operation. So in order for there not to be a COVID super spreader event, because people are working in these shifts all the time, they had to stagger the shifts, meaning people had to go from, you know, a 24-day schedule to a 7-day on, 7-day off, just so it's not an abundance of amount of people in the workplace at the same time.
What I mean, obviously America is, I think, famously more litigious than other areas in the world. How much of a risk is not providing a COVID safe or the right environment for an employer? Because obviously you run your business, Jacqueline, and I would think that people would come to you because they see a problem potentially in the distance.
Right. There are a lot of different protocols and regulations from the legislation that you have to be aware of. There's also such thing called OSHA. So there are protocols that OSHA has put in place as well to help organizations with coming up with protocols to address COVID. So there is some implication, you know, to the employer if those protocols are not put in place properly.
Kerr, your platform, which I must admit I have not looked at, from an HR agency professional like Jacqueline, how would she use your tools?
Well, basically what we enable people to do is to evaluate themselves. So that when, for example, they come to our trainings, they can evaluate the stress level or burnout risk. Since they take a training, fill their own workbook and make their own development plans. And then after the training, once they have taken about 6 to 8 hour training, they can take it during several days or during a few weeks. And then they evaluate the situation again. And what actually very often has happened to us, and what was a little bit surprising for us in case of stress and burnout, which is currently maybe the biggest problem in the industry related to COVID-19, was that people actually didn't have enough skills to evaluate the situation fairly. And once they actually fairly, yeah, they were not really fair towards themselves or honest towards themselves. They just thought that I don't have a problem, but when they actually got to learn what is stress, what is burnout, how it happens, and when they spotted all the warning signs and then evaluated themselves in the end of a training, then currently during the COVID-19, we have seen that quite often those numbers in average numbers have been rising. So it means that people actually are more stressed than they are aware of.
So, COVID, I think one could say the best perspective is that it has forced change. The thing about change is that none of us like it. So tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to provide, so it's all down to practice. Mental health becomes mental wellness when you make mindful choices. And what we're going to do tomorrow is give you some experience that we've implemented ourselves to control as much as we can about the way we represent things inside our own head. All right, you have a good afternoon. I'll see you again.